White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, May 1, 2025. Briefing: Restoring Common Sense and Policy Shifts Under Trump. On May 1, 2025, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, joined by Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, delivered a wide-ranging press briefing that underscored the Trump administration's agenda of restoring common sense to American governance. The session, which spanned over an hour, touched on critical policy reversals, domestic priorities, and the administration's approach to media transparency, while also fielding tough questions on immigration, national security, and federal spending. Setting the tone: a new era of media engagement. Leavitt, the youngest press secretary in U.S. history, opened the briefing by emphasizing the White House's commitment to media openness and the First Amendment. She announced expanded access for new and independent media voices, including bloggers, podcasters, and social media creators, reflecting a shift from legacy media dominance to a more diverse press corps. As the youngest press secretary in history, thanks to President Trump, I take great pride in opening up this room to new media voices to share the president's message with as many Americans as possible, Leavitt declared, inviting non-traditional journalists to apply for credentials. This move, she argued, would ensure broader dissemination of the administration's message and greater accountability within the press room. Economic policy, energy, inflation, and deregulation. A central theme of the briefing was the administration's aggressive push to boost domestic energy production and tackle inflation. Leavitt detailed President Trump's recent executive order declaring a national energy emergency, aimed at increasing American energy supply and reducing costs for consumers. The Trump energy boom is incoming, and Americans can expect that, Leavitt stated, positioning energy policy as a cornerstone of the administration's inflation-fighting strategy. She also addressed concerns about a federal spending freeze announced by the Office of Management and Budget, clarifying that direct assistance to individuals would not be affected. The freeze, she said, was part of a broader effort to rein in government spending and fulfill campaign promises of fiscal responsibility. Leavitt repeatedly reassured the public, to individuals at home who receive direct assistance from the federal government, "You will not be impacted by this federal freeze. OMB is focused on analyzing the federal government's spending," which is exactly what the American people elected President Trump to do. Immigration: a culture shift in enforcement immigration policy. A signature issue for President Trump was another focal point. Pressed on the administration's stance, Leavitt affirmed a hardline approach, stating that all individuals apprehended by ICE since Trump's return to office were considered criminals for violating immigration laws. All of them because they illegally broke our nation's laws. And therefore, they are criminals as far as this administration goes. I know the last administration didn't see it that way. So it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal. But that's exactly what they are, Leavitt explained. This marked a clear rhetorical and policy departure from the previous administration, signaling stricter enforcement and a redefinition of criminality in the context of immigration, national security, security details, terror designations, and water in California. The briefing also addressed national security issues, including the controversial decision to strip lifetime security details from former officials involved in high-profile foreign policy actions, such as the 2020 strike on Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Despite concerns raised by lawmakers about potential threats, Leavitt said President Trump remained firm in his decision, arguing that taxpayers should not bear the cost of lifelong protection for former officials. The president was asked and answered this yesterday, and he was firm in his decision. "There's nothing stopping these individuals from obtaining private security," she said, citing legal precedent to support the policy. Leavitt also confirmed the administration's moves to end funding for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency and to redesignate Yemen's Houthi rebels as a foreign terrorist organization, both reversals of Biden-era policies. On a domestic security note, Leavitt was asked to clarify the federal government's role in addressing California's wildfires and water shortages. She credited President Trump's visit and pressure campaign for state officials' decision to restore water access, highlighting the Army Corps of Engineers' involvement in relief efforts. Just days after President Trump visited the devastation from these fires, the water was turned on. That is because of the pressure campaign he put on state and local officials there, who clearly lack all common sense, Leavitt asserted. Federal spending freeze. Impact and clarification. Reporters pressed Leavitt on the details of the OMB's spending freeze, particularly its effects on organizations like Meals on Wheels that provide indirect assistance to vulnerable populations. Leavitt maintained that direct federal assistance would remain untouched, but acknowledged ongoing analysis regarding indirect impacts. She promised transparency, stating, "We will continue to provide that list as it comes to fruition." But OMB right now is focused on analyzing the federal government's spending, media relations, truth, accountability, and a new standard. Leavitt took a combative tone regarding media accountability, vowing to call out what she described as misinformation and false reporting about the administration. "While I vow to provide the truth from this podium, we ask that all of you in this room hold yourselves to that same standard. We know for a fact there have been lies that have been pushed by many legacy media outlets in this country about this president, about his family, and we will not accept that. We will call you out when we feel that your reporting is wrong or there is misinformation about this White House," she warned. This approach, she suggested, would foster a more honest and transparent relationship between the administration and the press. Policy reversals and executive action. Throughout the briefing, Leavitt and Miller highlighted the administration's rapid pace of executive action, contrasting it with what they characterized as the failures and lies of the previous 4 years. They pointed to the restoration of Trump-era policies on energy, immigration, and foreign affairs as evidence of a decisive break with the past. It's very easy to speak truth from this podium when you have a president who is implementing policies that are wildly popular with the American people. And that's exactly what this administration is doing. It's correcting the lies and the wrongs of the past 4 years, Leavitt said. Looking ahead, upcoming events and initiatives. Leavitt closed the briefing by previewing President Trump's upcoming engagements, including a National Day of Prayer event and a commencement address. She reiterated the administration's focus on economic revitalization, deregulation, and national security, promising continued transparency and responsiveness to public concerns. Analysis: a return to Trump-era rhetoric and policy. The May 1, 2025 press briefing marked a clear return to the themes and tactics that defined Trump's first term: assertive policy reversals, a combative stance toward the press, and an emphasis on common-sense solutions. Leavitt's performance behind the podium signaled both continuity with Trump's previous communication strategy and an effort to adapt to a changing media landscape by embracing new platforms and voices. The administration's messaging was unequivocal. The Trump White House intends to move swiftly, unapologetically, and with a focus on reversing what it views as the missteps of its predecessor. Whether on energy, immigration, or media relations, the briefing made clear that the administration is determined to set a new tone and direction for the country. Key takeaways: media access. The White House is opening its doors to new media voices, reflecting a broader definition of journalism and a desire to bypass legacy outlets. Economic policy, energy dominance, and deregulation are central to the administration's inflation-fighting strategy. Immigration. A stricter enforcement regime redefines all immigration violations as criminal acts, marking a cultural and policy shift. National security. The administration is unapologetic about controversial decisions on security details and foreign policy reversals. Federal spending. The OMB's spending freeze aims to curb government outlays without affecting direct aid to individuals, though indirect impacts remain under review. Press relations. Leavitt promises both transparency and accountability, with a willingness to challenge perceived misinformation from the press. As the Trump administration's second term unfolds, The May 1st briefing offers a window into its priorities, methods, and the tone it intends to set in the months ahead. The message from the podium was unmistakable. A new era of common-sense governance has begun. And the White House is prepared to defend its agenda vigorously both to the American people and the press.